Hi, I'm Bob Berg, co-author of The Go-Giver and The Go-Giver Leader, and you're listening to Success is a Choice podcast. And I'm glad you are, because I personally recommend Jamy and the podcast very highly.
Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Welcome to Success is a Choice podcast. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler, and today we are honored to have Elizabeth Hamilton Guarino on the show. She is one busy lady as a mother of 4 sons, a best-selling author, speaker, training entrepreneur, and a recognized leader in personal development and optimal mindset strategies. Elizabeth is the CEO of the Better You Network and is the author of the best-selling book, Percolate, Let Your Best Self Filter Through. In 2011, Fast Company magazine named Elizabeth as one of their top influencers. She is used to interviewing people on her #1 rated best ever show, so it is exciting for us to flip the script and reverse the roles today. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I've got your name pronounced right. We went through that. I love your name. It's awesome. Thank you for that.
I appreciate that, and I look forward to asking you some questions today, and you getting to answer a few. You know, I mentioned a few things in the introduction. You're definitely a busy person. You're doing so many things to add value to so many, but if you would, just kind of fill in the gaps a little bit and give us a snapshot into your background.
Well, my background is in the financial services industry. I'm from Iowa, and once I graduated from college, I took a job at Sam's Club. So I've worked at Walmart. I've done all the door greeting and marketing that one human being could possibly do in a lifetime as a very young person. That really set the tone kind of taught me a lot right there about kindness and so forth. And so I worked at Merrill Corporation for a really long time and had a job in the financial services industry. Speed up a little bit. I'm 48 now. I'm a mom of 4 boys, and they're 16 through 22. And when that youngest one was entering first grade, I decided I wanted to go back to work. And so out of the house, bolting out of the house as fast as I could to go back to work, thinking that, that was the answer for me to go back. And after a few years, I decided that was not what I wanted to do, and I was kind of struggling the whole time I was there. And one day I kind of closed the door and said, enough is enough. There's got to be something better than this, best, and wrote the business plan for Best Ever You and quit my job that day.
And the rest is history, right? It's been all rainbows and butterflies since.
Oh yeah. Piece of cake. That was great walking in the door and telling your whole family you quit your job. No turbulence at all whatsoever. No, they were really supportive, but yeah, when you decide to go out on your own and follow a passion or a dream or a hobby or anything creative or anything like that, it is tough stuff, and it takes a super thick skin and a never give up drive, because that moment where this is kind of cliche, but that moment you feel like you're going to give up, you never know what's around the corner. And so I really believe in surrounding myself with a lot of love. I love social media for that as well. A huge fan of social media. It's just like us. We would have never met if it weren't for Twitter.
Yeah, which is, a lot of people will criticize social media sometimes, but I look at it as a tool. It doesn't have to be a weapon like some people use it for, but it can be a tool for positivity. It can be a tool for connection. And you're absolutely right. You can make so many great connections on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, all of those different outlets.
Yeah, it sort of takes the discipline to not get sucked into the negativity or the politics or, whatever is going on, and just stay in your lane. And I'm finding success staying in my positive lane. I am not one to anonymously comment on anything or negatively comment on anything or criticize anyone or anything like that. That's not my nature anyway. So it's not something that would ever come, be a way I would behave in social media. So I think your social media behavior is key to success.
Well, and I'm a big fan of an author named John Gordon, who's written a lot of books, and especially being a former college basketball coach, we read a lot of his books. But one of the things he does, he just recently came out with another book about positive leadership. And one of the things he says is positivity is not ignoring the negative, it's just overcoming the negative. And that's kind of what you're doing too with different endeavors that you've jumped into with your best ever you. You know, you're kind of looking at, you know, how can I become the best I'm capable of being? Kind of talk a little bit about where that idea came from for the best ever you.
A little bit of it rooted in pageants. I've competed in a few pageants in my lifetime, and kind of decided I was kind of in them for very different reasons than other people were in them for. And where I was trying to maybe self-improve or lose a little bit of weight, you know, felt age 40 coming on. It was like, okay, here's an opportunity to kind of regroup and, you know, get in shape and do all these things. You know, there's nothing quite like being on stage in Las Vegas at age 40 in a swimming suit. You know, you know, there's a whole lot of things that have to go into prepping for that. And so a little bit of that hidden sort of in the background, but a whole lot of issues with health, and not necessarily my own. But my father having a stroke was a very pivotal moment for me in my life and for him. And it's detailed in the book, but my dad at age 60 had a stroke and a series of strokes that followed, and was not, this was the type of event that was not something you're supposed to live through. And he lived through it, not only lived through it, but, you know, I would go all the way to thrive, but I would tell you that he's a miracle. We call him the ICU warrior. And so a lot of that is in Best Ever You. A lot of my parents and their beliefs and their never give up and their will to live and all this stuff is in Best Ever You, coupled with my own, excuse me, life-threatening allergic reactions. I'm a human being that developed life-threatening allergies to peanuts, nuts, fish, and shellfish after my second pregnancy. And so I've nearly died twice, once while 6 months pregnant with our son Cam. And so that really shifts things quickly into perspective.
Well, talk a little bit more about that, if you would, about how, you know, when you have a near-death experience, how that does shape that perspective and change it a little bit. And that pretty much, if my math is correct, that's around the time that you kind of quit your job or decide to go into this current area of your life. Is that correct?
Yeah, a little bit, definitely. It was definitely the seeds for it, for sure, and really less about me and more about my dad, because I had my allergic reactions prior to my dad having his stroke. We were already in Maine, and I'd already had Cameron and all that stuff. But what I was doing was feeling very victim, you know, oh, woe is me kind of thing. I've got this, and there's a lot worse things that you can have. And I was really sad and depressed over, you know, really having a life-altering health problem myself. And so, again, fast forward a little bit, and my dad is in a rehab facility where it's looking like he's going to live through this, you know, kind of thing, and they've put him in a rehab facility, and they were doing speech therapy with him. They got him all ready for speech therapy. My mom and I went down the hallway with him, all that good stuff, and the nurse said to us, okay, we're going to play this alphabet game. It's real common with stroke survivors. We want to see where speech and memory are at, and it's an alphabet game. When I say the letter A, he's going to tell me what word comes to mind. And she kind of took us aside and said, you know, most people, when they have this happen, go, they don't say any words, they don't do anything, you know, they just sort of, you know, kind of say the sound. And so we were like, oh, great, you know, we don't know what to expect here. So she goes A, and my dad goes, aardvark. And my mom and I looked at each other like, okay, he's completely lost his marbles, you know, aardvark, where the heck did that come from? Then he says, benevolence, courage, determination, excellence. F was a swear word. I've changed that to faith in my book. Goodness, kindness, you know, on and on, happiness, integrity. He went on and on and on with this, what I called the alphabet of life. And as he was saying this, I just got chills. And it was his way of kind of saying, you know, I'm not only going to live through this, I'm thriving through this. And I carry a notebook in my purse, and I got out my notebook, and I've got screenshots of this in my social media and stuff, but I wrote, I'm a terrible artist, I drew like a I don't know what it was, like a coffee pot, teapot thing, and it had letters kind of percolating out the front of it, and I called it, the original book of Percolate was called The ABCs of Life, and each chapter was the word that my dad said. It's not structured like that right now. It's kind of in there. But that moment made me stop feeling sorry for myself, and it was just a moment where I was like, there's something to learn. That's a long story. Sorry, I rambled.
No, that's all right. And it became a best-selling book. It's gotten really positive reviews. It's called Percolate, Let Your Best Self Filter Through. Now, you're a big-time fan of coffee, I've heard. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am. I'm a coffee and tea fan. I love green tea, and I love a special coffee called Cameron's Coffee, which is, it's allergy free. So I can drink Cameron's coffee. There's a little ad, but in Percolate, it's all coffee metaphors, and we had a lot of fun writing coffee metaphors. But even if you don't love coffee or don't love coffee metaphors, the books, you can read the book. It's decodable, if you will. You can decipher the metaphors.
Yeah, we'll be sure to put the where you can get the book in our show notes, so you can definitely go check that out and learn how to let your best self filter through. That's a nice title. I like that. And why? There's a lot of self-help books out there. There's a lot of leadership books out there. Why should our listeners, or why should someone go pick this book up compared to maybe a different self-help book that's out there?
I wrote a book that I would actually buy myself. I thought that was really, really important. I went into this going, I can't just write something that I think people are going to buy. I have to write something that I would actually buy and that my friends would actually buy. And I tested this book out. The whole story of how I wrote this book is in the book. And my friends that helped me write the book are written in the book. So it's all woven in. So it's percolates, and it's percolating. But I would buy this book personally because it's not clinical. It's written like you and I are having a chat like this. We're just having a chat about life and all things best ever. And what's written in the book really is a 9-point plan to help you learn to deal with change. That's really what the book's about. The whole thing about the book is you can, whether something happens to you or whether you want to make a change. There's a 9-point plan in here to help you do that. And what I like about the plan that I wrote isn't that you go, okay, step 1, I'm done, 2, I'm done, 3, I'm done, 9, I'm done, okay, great, I'm changed. I wrote it so that you can, it just is like a constant circle. So if you're stuck, you can go to step 4 and reread it and keep going.
Well, you also host a show called the Best Ever You radio show. It's a very highly rated show. You've had 400 or so episodes now, or broadcast dates. As you look at some of the people you've had on, you've had people that maybe some of our listeners would have heard of, like Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Ed Asner, TV actor, Mitch Gaylord, an Olympian gymnast. You've had a lot of different people on your show. As you look back, are there some guests that maybe stand out to you, or things that have been said, or highlights from those 400 episodes that you'd love to share?
I love the radio show. It's so much fun to meet new people and share their stories with our listeners. I think of all, it's hard to, if all 400 people are listening, it's hard to pick one. But one of my favorite episodes is with Alana Stewart. Just after Farrah Fawcett passed away, Alana Stewart came on and talked all about Farrah for about an hour with us. And I talk to Alana Stewart a lot, and she's one of my pals, and she's probably going to come back on the radio show and do some writing for Best Ever You this year. But she keeps Farrah Fawcett alive and well with us all, and she's just a bright soul. I don't know. I love Alana Stewart. I just had a guest on yesterday that was fascinating to me. The head baseball coach at the University of Iowa was on, a guy by the name of Rick Heller, and he's been a baseball coach or other coach for 30 years, and I found his wisdom and his tone of the culture that he creates everywhere he goes pretty genius. They call it #HellerBall on the internet, and I think he's got something there. And then I loved having my own son's baseball coach on too, Coach Solano from New Haven. That was a really fun interview, and he's got a new baby, and it's fun to see the success that they're having. They're ranked like 17th in the country. So just every new guest brings something new, and we also just got syndicated on iHeartRadio about 2 days ago. So just when you feel like you're never doing enough or you can't do enough, something really blessed happens. I love that.
Your guest list is pretty across the board. It's you mentioned a couple sports, a couple baseball coaches, but you have a lot of different people from a lot of different areas, and so it's definitely something worth checking out. You even had I believe it was last week, you had a college athlete. So it's not just, a professional or not just somebody that's been around for 50 years. You have people that are going through it right now. I believe you had a track athlete from the University of Georgia.
Isn't that fun? I love it when kids, and I'm going to call you kid, Kate Hall, I'm sorry, young adults come on the show. And I hung up the phone after interviewing Kate Hall, who's a Georgia Bulldog track and field star. She's from Maine here. She's diabetic and has celiac disease to boot. I love hanging up the phone and going, wow, I am inspired by a 21-year-old kid, a 21-year-old young adult. I don't want to offend her or anything, but, fascinating. And I've had teenagers on before who carry the whole conversation for a full hour with no commercial interruptions. And you just leave going, wow. And what's fun about it is, I've been doing this for 7 years. I've had that 14-year-old on the show and, carry it out a bunch of years, seeing what they're doing. They're still doing amazing things and still inspiring people. Like we had I'm not going to remember it, Sparkle, the Sparkle gal. She does cheerleading in Iowa. I'll have to tell you what it is so you can fill in the blank here. But she brings in kids with disabilities into the cheerleading squads in the high schools, and she is absolutely fascinating. Sorry, I got to get her name for you here, but things like that. You just fascinated by the youth that comes on the show. I agree with you completely. But Kate Hall was definitely someone to watch, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, those kind of interviews, number one, are insightful. You can learn about somebody else that maybe you didn't know about, or learn about someone that you do know about, or maybe only see on TV or read about. But also you can get a different perspective. You can get a 21-year-old perspective on success and life and just where they're coming from and the enthusiasm and passion that they have. So that's a positive for all of us, I think.
Yeah, and as I was thinking Sparkle in my head, an old age moment here for me, it's the Sparkle effect, and it's Sarah Cronk. I just Googled that while we were on here. I was kind of fumbling for my computer here, but Sarah Cronk, I had her on when she was just a teenager, and if you go to the sparkleeffect.org, for example, you'll see how nationwide and worldwide she is now. She is a fascinating human being.
We'll return to our conversation with Elizabeth in just a moment. She has a passion for helping people become the best ever version of themselves. It doesn't matter if we're an adult or if we're a teenager. We can always become better. And we believe that wholeheartedly, which is one of the reasons we wrote the Leadership Playbook, Become Your Team's Most Valuable Leader. The insights and stories in this book can help student athletes learn how to become better leaders and more positive teammates. You see, when we help develop today's students, we also help influence the future. So please visit theleadershipplaybook.com to learn more about this impactful book. And now back to more insights from Elizabeth Hamilton Guarino. So who are some people that would be on your bucket list that you would love to still interview?
I wish I could go back and interview George Burns. That would have been the coolest interview ever. I don't know. I was thinking about that, and it's like, I don't know if I can answer that because everything changes so much. I actually do not have a list of who I want to interview. I go kind of a little bit by the seat of my pants with just seeing who comes up, who I encounter next, who's interesting, who I meet, who I actually meet in person, who picks up the phone. There's a whole list of things I'm thinking about kind of in the background for the direction of the show. Like I never could have predicted I was going to be interviewing Ed Asner. A million years could come and go, and I could have never predicted that. I mean, I literally was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal, and the phone rang. So I don't know. I think it would be really cool to interview Oprah. I think everybody wants to interview Oprah. So sometimes I go, could be really cool to interview Gayle King. Wouldn't it be fun to have Gayle King on here for an hour and talk to her? there's so many people. I get scared with political guests. I'm not really hugely into politics, but I do find I wish people could come on and just drop the politics and talk about themselves personally. I think those would be more fascinating interviews with the politicians. Like, I think Joe Biden, for example, would be a great interview, but I wouldn't want to talk about politics.
Yeah, but that would be interesting because you don't get the veil pulled away or the curtain pulled away sometimes on the politicians because they're always on their A game or they're always trying to sell something or run for re-election.
Yeah, and I also think they don't think it's safe. I think the number one thing I wish I could communicate is when you come on my radio show, it's just a safe environment. I'm not going to ask you all the tough questions and the controversial questions that people ask. I'm really not interested in that. I'm more interested in the human being and the struggles, or the positives, or the, all those things. I'm very also interested in how people set their goals. So I'd be more interested in having somebody come on the show and just completely drop the politics. But, George Bush would be fascinating to me to have on. I'd talk about artwork. I'd be like, so you're an artist, are you? Kind of thing. But I'm not into making fun of people, and I'm not into all the controversial negative stuff. I just kind of love people.
Well, you mentioned in passing earlier in the interview your pageant experience, and you were Mrs. Maine twice, which is quite an accomplishment. And we were talking a little bit off air. You know one of our previous guests on episode 24, John Brubaker, who lives in the same area as you up in Maine, but he actually helped you a little bit with preparing for some pageants. So talk a little bit about this experience of being Mrs. Maine and what that entailed and maybe how some of your background and training helped you with that.
Well, Mrs. Maine twice. I went back for more, didn't I? It's pretty funny. I love being Mrs. Maine. I think it provides you a platform to do even better and reach more people and talk about what's near and dear to your heart. And for me, I talked a lot about stroke symptoms, and I talked a lot about children's literacy as well. I went around and made a lot of chocolate chip cookies for kids and read a lot of stories at the local schools and things like that. It was just a really good, fun time, and I was new to Maine. I had just moved here, so it was a great way to get to know people and businesses here as well. And one of the people that I got to know was John Brubaker. And one of the goals I had the second time around, which is in 2011, was to go in and win the interview. I could have cared less what I looked like in an evening gown or the active wear or whatever. I wanted to go there and meet people, make a bunch of friends, and have a really relaxing, kind of almost a vacation, getting dressed up and doing your hair vacation kind of thing. It was pretty fun. And where other people were standing on stage in their high heels trying to impress judges, I was in flats. Just totally being mellow. I did not care. And he coached me for the interview portion and taught me a lot about mirroring and repeating repeating the question and just answering the questions with passion and intelligence and heart and humanity and compassion and all of those things. And I got just a phenomenal score for doing that, and I thank him all the time for that. He is a wise soul. And you and I talked about being open to being coached. And I think it's really important in life to be a lifelong learner and be open to being coached no matter how old you are. And I think you share that opinion.
Here you are, you're an author, you're somebody that interviews high-level guests, you have your own business, but yet you still need help because, you can't see the picture when you're inside the frame a lot of times, and so we all need coaching.
We all need coaching, and we all need different perspectives, and, and not to be annoying to people, but if you see somebody doing it better than you are, and you want to be them or do what they're doing or, all that good stuff, they're a phone call away or a tweet away or a Facebook message away, and generally people are pretty nice. I don't know of anybody I've ever reached out to who said, absolutely, am I never going to help you ever. They're all like, sure, you can talk to me, and I'll teach you something. But your ears have to be open, and your heart has to be open in order for what they're saying to matter. And it might not be what you want to hear. I've had those phone calls, too.
Now, we also interviewed way back in the day. One of our very first interviews was with a guy who is the official fitness trainer for Miss USA. So I wish we would have known each other back then. We could have gotten you in touch with him, Scott Keppel, in episode 6. But he's trains people for the Miss USA and Miss America contests. So that would have been interesting. But,
I could use him now.
Yeah, we all could use him now. Yeah. could use him, and he could have helped you look a little bit better in those flats.
Exactly, my Clarks.
Yeah.
There was one lady standing beside me. She's like, "You have Clarks on?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." It was so funny. She's like, "You don't care, do you?" I'm like, "No, I don't."
Which is fine because it doesn't really matter whether it's Miss USA or Mrs. Maine or whatever contest you're in. It's getting to be where it's not just about looks, it's about other things, and it's about well-rounded. And so, it isn't just about the swimsuit portion or the evening gown portion. And also what you said, you can have a huge platform and you can do some good with this, with the pageant contest.
That was my whole mission, just to spread good cheer. And I've got so many good friends from that experience. There was one gal there, Mrs. Texas, who was so selfless. I said, I'm a fish out of water here. And I did not have hair extensions. I did not have false eyelashes. I did not have a lot of things that people had. And she goes, I've got you this week. I'm going to do your hair and makeup for you the whole time. Mrs. Texas, that was huge. To this day, I go back probably once every quarter and give her a hug in social media and talk to her and just say, that was really cool what you did. But she recognized that I was just like, not there for what everybody else was there for, and we talk a lot. And that was just the most selfless thing anybody's done. You could tell, she probably didn't have to try very hard to be in the top 10. She just sort of was it. That's what they were looking for and all that stuff. And she worked, you could tell she was in super phenomenal shape and all that stuff. She did not work at it or anything like that, but she was so confident in her abilities in that realm to then reach out and help somebody else. And that is amazing. Which
is really what a lot of leadership is all about. And what a lot of success in whatever you're doing and significance is helping other people and making things better and adding value to others.
Yeah, I so live by that. If I come across you in some way, my goal is for us both to be better as a result of that interaction. That's my motto. And again, we might not both like what we're hearing or saying, even because sometimes it's a little bit of tough love out there to help you be your best. It's not all, you're the best, you're the best, you're the greatest, you're the best. It's, you need to work harder at that. And sometimes that's not easy to hear, but it'll make you be your best if you listen.
Well, and I heard a quote once, and I liked a lot of the principle of the quote, but it said success is when you become the best you're capable of being, and significance is when you help others become the best that they're capable of being.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And we see that a lot in sports, too. A lot of athletes become great, but they don't make their teams better, or they don't make their teammates better.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And I think a lot of that comes from within. Maybe they don't feel their best. And so I think it's very important to keep perspective about what best is, because your very best might be somebody else's dream. And so I think it's really important at whatever level you're at to make sure you're pausing and thinking about other people. Because it doesn't mean you have to be a multi-million-dollar, crazy successful athlete to then again reach back. You can be anybody and reach back with any kind of knowledge. It could even be how to bake a cookie. It does not have to be profound to impact another person's life.
So you're a wife, you're a mother of 4, you're a business owner, author, speaker, you do all these kinds of things. How do you manage your life? How do you manage your time?
Wisely. Not everything is urgent at every given moment, but I also have a phenomenal support support system, and I do also do all of this from home. So it's not like I'm leaving every day for 10 hours and commuting and all this good stuff. So my time might be a little bit more open in that respect to doing things. But I have a work from home office. It's a dedicated office. It's the Best Ever You office, and it wasn't so easy at certain points to do what I'm doing. When the kids were little, quite frankly, I was not one to put them in daycare and go work. I was at home with the kids working. I joke that sometimes the pool was the home office, or my walk-in closet for quiet moments. It just depends. But I am a picture of work from home mom. And when they were 4, 6, 8, and 10, a couple days a week, I would have people come in and help, so that I could have 2 days where I was working or something like that, and I would have somebody here watching the boys. Well, when they weren't at school age, but it's become a little bit easier. We have one who has a job, 2 in college, and one who's a sophomore in high school, and so you just roll with the times.
With doing all this stuff that you do, how do you recharge or kind of fill up, recharge your battery or kind of fill up your tank again?
I am a huge fan of sleep. I am such a sleeper, it's crazy. I need my sleep, I get my sleep, and I'm just a creature of sleep. The other thing I do is take a lot of pictures. I have an Instagram dedicated to my photography. I think it's E.H. Guarino photography or EHG photography. I can't remember which one it is, but it's on there. And so seldom do you see me without a camera around my neck, a real camera, not a phone, my camera. And then I write and read a lot. Those are my things. And I bake cookies. But those are my recharge things. But sleep is key.
Is there a book that you're reading right now or that you just read that you would highly recommend?
Actually, yeah. I just finished it's not what you're going to want to hear, probably. It's not like some profound self-help book or anything like that, but I just read a hockey book. Isn't that funny? I just read, I may destroy his last name, but I just read Dennis Maruk. He scored 60 goals in one season. He was a Washington National. And I came across him on Twitter because I'm interviewing Bernard Robichaud, who is from Trailer Park Boys.
Okay.
That's the story. And it kind of was like, oh, okay, I love hockey. I was raised going to Minnesota Wild games with my dad, and I'm a huge hockey fan and baseball fan. And so I read his book, and it is so easy to read and so from his heart. And at the back of it, he's had open heart surgery. He just had open heart surgery a year ago. And I kind of wish that was in the beginning of the book so you knew where he was coming from the whole time. But wow, what an interesting book that details his career after the NHL.
That's great. We will put that in the show notes as well. I'm always on the lookout for a new book to read. Yeah,
really well written. I probably destroyed his last name. I apologize if I just did that because I haven't talked to him in person yet. I've been talking to him on Twitter, and I intend to have him as a guest on the show. You should too. It's a great story, and all the struggles that you go through in that transition from being a professional athlete to now what.
That's great. That's great. Where can people reach out to you or connect with you or learn about what you're doing, Elizabeth?
I'm always in email, elizabeth@besteveryou.com, or I'm on social media. I'm highly Googleable. You can Google me all you want. It's funny. I'm at Best Ever You, really, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. I'm there, and I love to talk to people and meet people and learn about people, so I welcome any kind of interactions that are positive.
Awesome. Well, you are a very busy person, so we appreciate your time that you've given us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jamie, and I look forward to having you on my show as well.
I look forward to that as well.
Good words from Elizabeth Hamilton Guarino today. Becoming the best ever version of you is something that should be the goal for all of us. I encourage you to check out her site at besteveryou.com. More than 1 million people have listened to her show and been impacted. Also, if you liked this episode, please help share it with others by leaving a 5-star review on iTunes. Ratings and reviews are the lifeblood of a podcast, and it's one of the best ways to help others find the podcast as well. Thanks so much, and until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?